Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Grand Cruz Astrology. My name is Clayton Cruz, and today I'm going to talk to you about Mercury going direct in the sign of Cancer. Now, we've had Mercury retrograde for a few weeks, and I did a video about that and how Mercury going retrograde in the sign of Cancer has been like a deep dive. That's kind of how I saw it, just us doing sort of a mental inventory of the emotional impulses, the emotional triggers, some of the deeper emotional constructs that we have going on, some of the emotional patterns that we carry. That's been sort of a theme, not only for the last 3 weeks as Mercury's been retrograde, but it actually started, about 9 weeks ago. That would be, about 6 weeks ago, sorry. About 6 weeks ago when Mercury went into shadow. So the Mercury retrograde process is actually about a 9 week process, with the middle 3 weeks being the actual retrograde. But the 3 weeks before, when it's in a shadow period, and the 3 weeks after, still in a shadow period, it's all relevant and has to do with reflection and taking a mental inventory in some area of our lives, in some expression with whatever sign Mercury is retrograde in. So it's going direct now, still in shadow period, and it's going to be moving very slowly. Whenever a planet goes direct, it takes a little while for it to get back to speed again. So in Mercury's case, a planet that moves very quickly, when it does go retrograde or it does go direct, it's moving very slowly. And so for that reason, a planet that normally kind of skips over the top and moves very quickly, it's moving very slowly, and its energy is more pronounced. Its effect is more pronounced. So Mercury, when it does go direct, or when it does go retrograde, when it stations, that is when it is closest to the Earth. That's when its actual effect on the Earth, in a very sort of physical magnetic way, is at its most powerful. And so we can kind of think, and like how I like to think of a Mercury retrograde, is just an abundance, an overflow of Mercury. It's just so much coming in all at the same time that it can be hard for our normal faculties to make sense of it and to do the mercurial thing of putting everything in its place and connecting all the dots. It's too much too fast, and so it can feel like things are slowing down because the way that we normally process and move through the world isn't up to speed, because there's so many variables happening. So that's why we always talk about when Mercury goes retrograde, the scheduling mishaps, technology glitches, these kinds of things happen when Mercury goes retrograde, because there's an overload of mercurial energy, which has to do with technology, has to do with communication, has to do with transport, has to do with sort of day-to-day activities, right? So when Mercury goes retrograde, it's usually not, a big, major, life-changing kind of thing, but it is on a day-to-day level. It can be very disruptive. It can be very disruptive if we have no context for it and we're not familiar with what the process is all about. It's designed to trip us up a little bit and make us take a step back. So we've been doing that, and we've been doing that in the sign of Cancer with Mercury retrograde in the sign of Cancer, which is about taking an emotional inventory. Mercury is very mental. It's very objective and removed. So in going retrograde in the sign of Cancer, it's getting objective about our subjectivity, right? Because Cancer is an emotional sign. It's ruled by the moon, and so we're looking at a lot of our emotional, instinctual expression, right? When Mercury's been retrograde. Well, now it's moving forward. So some of that reflection time, some of that aha moments, some of those keys that we may have picked up during the retrograde, we're now going to be able to put forward in our lives. We're now going to be able to express more clearly as Mercury gets moving forward. Okay, now caveat here: the when Mercury does move forward, it takes a little while, as I said, for it to pick up some steam, and it will be in shadow for a few weeks. So um, we may what that typically means, how I understand it, is when Mercury starts to move forward, something in us biochemically or just mentally, this is how I experience it, something clicks, right? And we just know that we've changed directions and now we're going forward again, and when we can feel it. And then the temptation is for us to, or for me, it's how I absolutely experience it, to get ahead of ourselves, just to go, just to, oh wow, we're not moving backwards anymore, da, 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 and just go in the other direction at full speed. But it would behoove us to, go slowly and wait for Mercury to get back up to speed and to not get ahead of it, because we may, have the temptation to push too far too fast and expect too much all at once when Mercury, it's not quite there yet. It'll pick up speed. Mercury's a pretty agile planet in its relation to the Earth, and it's from a geocentric perspective how it moves. So, a few weeks, it's not too long, and it'll get going again, and it'll get to full speed, and we can use that energy at its max once it does get, back to speed again. Now, the thing about this is we have a very unique situation going on with Mercury, and I talked a little bit about it in the Mars video. We have Mercury at 5 degrees coming into 5 degrees Cancer, coming into a square with Mars, which is right around, well, it's in early Aries, right around 5 degrees as well. And so as Mercury, as I said, which is going direct and moving slower to begin with until it picks up speed, it's actually going to move in square, in tandem with Mars, which always moves at a slower speed than Mercury anyway. So these two planets are moving at 90 degrees to one another in tandem for the month of July. For the rest of the month, they're going to be right there together. This is a few weeks of Mars and Mercury being squared in one another. Now, why is that important? Well, it's significant because these two planets, they go retrograde, or they come into square aspect, on a semi-regular basis, right? It's not unusual. However, when they do, usually because Mercury's moving so quickly, it's just a couple of days, right? And so for that couple of days, I would say, okay, this is going to be a time that we may be, a little sensitive, or a little trigger happy, or just touchy feely. It could be, we could get aggravated easily, right? We could get just have a little bit of, heightened anxiety, right? Because Mercury rules the nervous system, and Mars rules aggression and action, and anger and frustration at times when negatively aspected. So in this case, this is a few weeks. So, the advice with this as Mercury goes forward is to try and be patient as best you can, and understand that we are very likely to be a little sensitive right now. Okay. And we are, it's like our buttons are on display to get pushed. Okay. And so with that being said, knowledge is power. And so knowing that, just being aware of that, can maybe give you the clarity to take a step back and to try to use this frustration energy in a positive way. Mercury rules the hands, and Mars rules energy, and there could be that could be an outlet for this energy. Something using the hand is a great time to do any activity that is requires a little bit of energy, physical or a lot of energy, and is using the hands. If fist fighting were a healthy activity, I'd say it's a great time to fist fight to get that energy out. But or just punching a punching bag, if that's your thing, or building something, doing something that is demanding of that physical energy and using the hands. Now, it doesn't have to be, uh, it doesn't have to be all out physical, just, you know, crazy amount of energy expended. It could be, I don't know, knitting or writing or painting or, something. It doesn't necessarily have to be vigorous, but you're if it's not so vigorous, you're probably going to want to do more of it, and it's probably going to be in the realm of repetition and quantity, not so much quality. So what do I mean by that is you're going to want to be using your hands and doing a lot of different things and using that energy as opposed to doing something that's very fine tuned, right? So that's one way to use the energy, but understand the square is there, and it can really trigger our nervous system, and we could be very sensitive to this energy. But with every square, there is a potential for uh, manifesting in the physical world. So that's why I recommend doing something with the hands at this time. In fact, I'm going to go down and chop blackberries and cut some invasive weeds out. That's how I'm using this energy, and I don't know. I kind of feel like that's really going to expel a lot of that Mars tension, because Mars can, if not expressed, can become latent energy, and then we lash out. Okay, and with Mercury in the sign of Cancer, very subjective energy, right? So we have Mercury in the sign of Cancer, which is emotional. It's subjective. It has to do with wanting to connect with people emotionally. It can be very uh, dependent, and yet it can also be very caretaking. So it has that sort of relational component. It has sort of a maternal component to it. Whereas Mars in Aries is very different, very rugged, individual, get it done, take action, lead, headstrong. Okay, and so you know we can find ourselves either taking on one or the other sides of these energies. Um, if we're not conscious of it, we could be in the sort of uh, emotionally expressive Mercury and Cancer energy of um, crying out, right? And aspected this way, or we could be in this sort of headstrong bully kind of, you know, don't bother me with your whining kind of energy of Mars and Aries. This is an aspect of tension. So when we're not conscious of it, this is we can slip into one of these two polarities, right? So and this could be a conversation that we're not necessarily having outside in the world. It could be a conversation that's going on internally within ourselves, right? So when I see something like this for the next few weeks, just be gentle with yourself first off, and there could be a desire to want to push and do more and get more done. And if Mars internally, that sort of masculine drive is pushing you internally, it can be very dismissive and of the Mercury and Cancer energy. And so you may not be expressing those needs that you have, or conversely, you could be expressing it full on over the top without any kind of filter on it or boundary to it. So just being aware that these energies are at play, and if we're not conscious of them, we can easily slip into an extreme. Or in relation to other people, we can slip into extreme of one side or the other. So just be conscious of that. It's going to be with us for a few weeks. Um, as it moves forward, it's going to be making both of these planets are going to be making aspect to other planets, and I'm going to make more videos about that. It's also going to be making an aspect to the eclipse point. And when I did the eclipse video, I said that the eclipse at the time of the eclipse um, was a powerful time. However, when Mars makes an aspect to it, Mars and Mercury make an aspect to it, that's when we could see something actually manifest in the physical world in relation to the eclipse. So that's just one aspect. There's going to be aspects of Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn. As I said, Mars is going to be in intense conversation with all these planets in Capricorn here, coming into the later part of the month, and for the rest of the year. This is a theme. So um, you know, it's going to be around. Mars shakes things up for a reason. It brings the action where action is needed, and it's sort of like it sort of just kicks in the door and says we'll deal with the consequences later. So, and some of the other planets that it's in conversation with may not agree, right? So we will see how that plays out. But for now, just know that Mars and Mercury are together. Maybe a little, uh, our awareness and our sensitivities may be a little bit heightened, and we may be a little bit anxious, but it also provides us the opportunity to express that energy, ideally through our hands in some way, and to create something with it. So go out there, create, have a good time. I'll make another video soon. And all right, that's all I got. All right, see you soon. Take care. Bye.